I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. New atheism. How is it different from old atheism? A Manhattan church finds out.
This stuff is something that can be clipped into a 3.5-minute segment between commercials. I don't think you can it's fair to dispatch with God's existence in under that time.
Plus, Don't Ask, Don't Tell meets its end. I'll talk to the Archbishop for the Military Services to get his thoughts. And Miss World Youth Day in Madrid, forget about it. Youth ministers bring the mother of all youth events to Brooklyn.
A lot of us here went on this World Youth Day experience, so now this World Youth Day, we tried to bring that back with us.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. A recent Gallup poll showed that more than 9 out of 10 Americans answered yes to the following question: do you believe in God? That's a number that's remained pretty steady since Gallup first started asking that question back in the 1940s. Still, though, with the popularity of writers like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, believers are now being confronted with a very vocal group of non-believers. During a recent speaking appearance, the head of the Anglican Church, Archbishop Rowan Williams, cited Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, in calling atheism the, quote, new cool thing. But what is this group of new atheists really saying? Well, for answers, we went to the More Hot Topics speaker series of St. Thomas More in Manhattan, where Father Anthony Andreassi, a priest of the Brooklyn Oratory of St. Philip Neri, gave a talk on the new atheism.
What I'm doing here tonight is I hope to give you a layman's overview of what we're calling the new atheism, and maybe some practical suggestions on how you might handle it, whether your own children come to you with some questions about it, or maybe friends or family come to you with questions about it.
This evening our presentation is entitled The New Atheism. Parents and families are being faced with lots of issues these days, and we hope that this might be a tool to help them address this particular issue of new atheism.
The new atheists, they seem not to fully admit the gravity of what they're saying. It seems to me that the new atheists reject God and then go out to have a drink. The earlier atheists, the existentialists, realized when you destroyed God, if you will, you were now left with an enormous task of why to go on living. Without an infinite God, meaning that this life is meaningful and purposeful. The new atheists think you can sort of demolish God and just go about your business. There has certainly been an outpouring of aggressive atheism lately. Here are a few examples. Last year in Europe, cities from Milan to London, some of the slogans on the buses, on the subways throughout said, "There probably is no God, so enjoy your life." What's negative about it is that the arguments that these new atheists are using are so slick, but ultimately so thin. And there's a trendiness to it. Whereas I guess if I had a son or daughter who was reading Freud or Feuerbach, I'd scratch my head and say, wow, this person is really wrestling with these very, very profound questions of God's existence. This stuff is something that can be clipped into a 3.5-minute segment between commercials, and I don't think you can it's fair to dispatch with God's existence in under that time. That's what it's not intellectually honest. That's, I think, what's so negative about it. When it comes to passing on the faith to the next generation, while a lot of it can and should be taught, a lot more of it is caught. Probably the far greater threat to religious faith than the new atheists is the sort of rampant materialism of American life. If you're a child growing up in the upper middle class and you have lots of money and access to resources and want for nothing, that could be far more deadening to the spirit, to your soul, than the new atheists. So if the new atheists didn't exist, we'd still have plenty of challenges to deal with.
Well, there are always challenges. And stay tuned, there is much more Currents ahead. When we come back, a new push by the church to combat poverty. That story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is history. And I talk about the policy's demise with the Archbishop for the U.S. military's Catholics. First, though, let's have a look at the rest of the day's headlines. On the heels of news that nearly 1 in 6 Americans lives in poverty, the president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference is urging U.S. clergy to preach about poverty in their homilies. In a letter to the country's bishops, New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan encouraged church leaders to, quote, focus public attention and priority on the scandal of so much poverty and so many without work in our society. Well, teachers in Philadelphia's Catholic high schools are back in the classroom today after agreeing to a new contract. A spokesperson for the Philadelphia Archdiocese says that new contract, quote, really gives us a cutting edge for the students and the parents that we serve. Among the terms of the new contract are an online grading system, an increase in instructional time for students, and professional development time for teachers. The execution of a death row inmate in Georgia will apparently move ahead as scheduled tomorrow, even after an appeal from Pope Benedict to spare the prisoner's life. Troy Davis has lost what may be his final bid for clemency after the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles ruled Davis should die. He was convicted of the 1989 killing of an off-duty police officer in Savannah, Georgia. In a letter, the Pope's envoy to the U.S. asked state officials to consider the special circumstances of the case, those being a lack of physical evidence and that the murder weapon was never found. In other news, while the Vatican remains neutral on the issue, some other Catholics are voicing support for granting Palestine official statehood. Both the Latin Rite Patriarchate of Jerusalem and Caritas Jerusalem have come out in support of official recognition at the United Nations for Palestine. The Palestinian Authority is planning to make that request during the meeting of the UN's General Assembly this week. 121 heads of state were expected to attend the 6-day event. Well, turning now to Europe, where the head of the Catholic Church in Austria has issued a warning to a group of about 400 rebellious priests. That group, known as the Priests Initiative, has announced that they defy church teaching. For example, the priests say they will give communion to Protestants and divorced people who've remarried, as well as allow lay people to preach and run parishes without priests. All of that is prohibited by church law. Vienna Archbishop Cardinal Christoph Schönborn says if the priests take actions that clearly contradict church teaching, it will lead to, quote, serious conflict. Well, meanwhile, in neighboring Germany, Pope Benedict is planning to touch down in his home country in less than 2 days. Ahead of that trip, he addressed the German people in a televised speech. Rome Reports has the details.
In wenigen Tagen werde ich zu meiner Reise nach Deutschland aufbrechen.
This video of the Pope is part of a 4-minute speech which was recently aired by a German television network. In it, the Pope talks about his eagerness to visit his home country, but most importantly, he talks about his apostolic trip. The Pope's visit will run from September 22nd to the 25th. It includes a visit to Berlin, where the Pope will address Germany's national parliament. Afterward, he'll celebrate a Mass at the Olympic Stadium. During that short speech, the Pope said he's also looking forward to his visit to Erfurt, where aside from visiting the Augustinian monastery, he'll also pray with representatives of the evangelical church. Germany has a population of roughly 82 million people, of which 71% are Christians, 5% are Muslim, and 24% are agnostic. During his speech, the Pope addressed those who have religious doubts.
Sie werden mich vielleicht fragen, gibt es Gott überhaupt? Und wenn es ihn gibt, befasst sich überhaupt mit uns? Können wir bis zu ihm vordringen? Nun, es ist wahr, wir können Gott nicht auf den Tisch legen. Wir können nicht wie ein Gerät ihn anrühren oder wie irgendeine Sache in die Hand nehmen. Wir müssen die Wahrnehmungsfähigkeit für Gott, die in uns da ist, wieder neu entwickeln. In der Größe des Kosmos können wir etwas ahnen von der Größe Gottes.
The answer, says the Pope, lies in knowing how to recognize God and his message.
Well, yesterday, Pope Benedict caught up with some old friends, crew members of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. That's NASA's final space shuttle mission. The astronauts visited the Pope at his summer home, Castel Gandolfo. They're currently on a speaking tour of Italy. Now, back in May, the Pope spoke with the astronauts via a video link while the crew were in the space shuttle on their mission to the International Space Station. And finally, Dolores Hope, the widow of legendary entertainer Bob Hope, has died. Like her husband, Dolores Hope was also an entertainer, arguably best known for her singing ability. A Catholic, Mrs. Hope received numerous honors for her charitable work, including being given the title of Dame of St. Gregory the Great with Star, one of only 4 women to be given that honor. She also received the Terence Cardinal Cook Humanitarian Award from Our Lady of Mercy Medical Center here in New York. And like her husband, she also lived to a ripe old age. Dolores Hope died yesterday of natural causes. She was 102 years old. Well, stay with us. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, it's the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but how will that affect military chaplains? We'll find out. Welcome back. Well, it was a day that was at least a couple of years in the making. Back in 2008, during his presidential campaign, then Illinois Senator Barack Obama advocated for a full repeal of the U.S. military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. The policy, which prohibited servicemen and women with same-sex attraction to openly serve, had resulted in the discharge of more than 13,000 men and women from the military. Then in December, after much debate in Washington and a report from the Pentagon, the Senate voted to end the U.S. military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Just days after the vote, President Obama, as promised, signed the repeal into law. Well, ahead of the repeal, people on both sides of the issue voiced their views, including the Archbishop for the Military Services, Timothy Broglio. Yesterday, ahead of the repeal going into effect, I spoke by phone with Archbishop Broglio. Archbishop Broglio, thanks so much for joining us today, sir. Really appreciate your time.
Well, I'm very happy to be with you and also send my greetings to all of your listeners.
Well, thank you so much. And you know, of course, today, a big day for the military, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, coming to an end. What is going to change when this the policy does, of course, come to an end, as far as the Ministry of Military Chaplains?
Well, as far as the Ministry of Military Chaplains is concerned, at least as far as the Catholic chaplains are concerned, not much will change because obviously they will continue to teach what the Church teaches. And the Church is unwavering in her commitment to the pastoral care of all persons in need, regardless of their sexual inclination or anything else. But that increased sensitivity, obviously the chaplains will have to be mindful of the situation in which they find themselves, and they'll certainly have to be very attentive to those needs, while at the same time always maintaining and teaching what the Catholic Church teaches.
Sure, and I know that's something that I've sort of encountered along the way here, doing interviews with different people about first the possible doing away with of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and then the implementation of the policy and all of that, was that some people along the way have made the implication that you know, military chaplains won't be able to do their jobs, or some of them might not be able to do so because they might have to minister to people who are homosexual. But don't they do that already, maybe now without even knowing it?
Oh, I'm certain they do. There's no question about that. They do minister to those people, regardless of whether it's known or not. And of course, as you probably know, the chaplain is the one person that you can go to on a military installation that's not required to report anything about the conversation or about the nature of the problem, or even the fact that the individual has gone to see the chaplain. So in that sense, I don't think much will change. And also, the First Amendment makes very clear that in the United States we have freedom of religion, which is not merely freedom of worship, but it is also the freedom to hold and to teach the truths of a given religion. And so that will continue to protect our chaplains in the military service.
Sure, and I was actually going to ask about that, if you thought that maybe this policy was sort of encroaching on a freedom of religion in any way, but you don't see any conflict there at all, it sounds like.
I do not. At least certainly when a Catholic priest is acting in a function as a Catholic priest, either in the liturgy, in catechesis. Where the difficulty might come is when he is acting as a military officer or counseling someone who's not there because of his faith basis, but is there because of the just wanting to speak to a chaplain. And that obviously can present some difficulties and also might put our chaplains at risk in the sense that certain activists might try to use this as an occasion to cause some difficulty or make some sort of a statement, and that obviously will not be helpful to the chaplain.
Sure. And what are your thoughts about as far as the implementation of this goes? Does it seem like everybody is kind of on board with getting rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and will be able to sort of comply with the new rules, just from your view, your perspective?
I think overall that is certainly the case. Obviously, there are going to be individual difficulties. There will be situations that the policy and its repeal did not take into consideration, and of course that might be cause for individual difficulties or situations that create a certain amount of preoccupation. But I think for the most part the transition will go smoothly. At least that's my hope.
Okay, well, we certainly hope so. Archbishop Timothy Broglio with the Archdiocese for Military Services. We thank you so much, sir, for taking some time out to join us today to talk about the issue. We really appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. I was happy to be able to be with you today.
Thank you very much. Very glad to have Archbishop Broglio part of the show. Well, stay with us. There is more Currents ahead. When we return, it's back. If you thought World Youth Day ended in August, think again.
The whole trip in Madrid ended up opening up my eyes to everyone else because I wasn't this open before about my faith and everything.
Well, finally tonight, close to 2 million people traveled to Spain last month for World Youth Day, including around 600 from the Diocese of Brooklyn. That's the largest group of any U.S. diocese. And, you know, here we are 1 month later, and the spirit of that gathering remains alive and well right here in Brooklyn. The Youth Ministry Office for Parishes in Bensonhurst sponsored their own World Youth Day. And although there were no long pilgrimages at this one, the young people were just as excited to be there.
Initially, we started Youth Day in Brooklyn because most people didn't have a chance to go to the World Youth Day. Now, this year, it holds a whole different level of meaning because for the first time, we had a group from Brooklyn attend the actual events and the pilgrimage in Madrid.
A lot of us here went on this World Youth Day experience, so now this World Youth Day, we tried to bring that back with us. We have all the different flags hung up. We brought some souvenirs we got from the trip, and we have them out on a table. We have people talking about the experience. As soon as I entered Madrid and we got off the bus, I was overwhelmed. There was immediately crowds of people all around you, like you could barely walk. We had our suitcases in tow. Just trying to cross the street, it was hard because there was crowds everywhere.
They expected 750,000 people, 2 million showed up. 2 million plus. All the things that went wrong or seemed to went wrong at World Youth Day. Yet in the end, it all worked out because everybody helped each other. 2 million people, everybody gave something.
Well, as of today so far, I've been looking at the perspective of everyone else. And it's interesting because you usually don't see youth running a lot of things. And when you walk outside, there's a kid behind a DJ booth. There's kids running the rides. There's kids running around face painting and other stuff. So I think it's an eye-opener to everyone else that the youth can do a lot more than just cause havoc and stuff like that.
I was so proud of the youth that were with me because I just watched them, you know, through embracing their faith, and through all their challenges that we had traveling, they just kept rising to the occasion and sharing with other kids and meeting youth from all over the world. So many times we were having conversations and you didn't know what they were actually saying, but you knew what they were saying.
I met people from Brazil, I met people from Italy, I met people from Japan, I met people from Africa, so it was pretty cool. And the kind of things that we did, there was one thing that we did in Fatima that a lot of people were doing. It was walking on your knees and saying the rosary.
They have this thing in Fatima where you walk on your knees for literally a whole mile. I couldn't do it on my own. And that whole unity was what helped me pull through. And the whole trip in Madrid ended up opening up my eyes to to everyone else, because I wasn't this open before about my faith and everything, and I wouldn't be standing up here if I couldn't say it was one of the best experiences of my life.
The older kids are close with me, and even though I only see them here, I still talk to them. They're still nice to me, and we talk. And after going there and coming back and being able to tell me all the things that happened, it was kind of exciting because now I want to do it too.
So cool, bringing all that excitement from Madrid home with them, and they keep on keeping on. You know, it's a great thing to see. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, you may think it's a thing of the past, but is the A-bomb still a threat? A Catholic group looks for answers. Until then, though, be sure to visit our website, currentsny.net. You can also get the latest from the show on Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter. But don't go anywhere just yet. There is more great programming coming up just ahead here on NET. Coming up at 8 o'clock, it's an all-new season of Ask the Doctor. Yeah, tune in as Dr. Stephen Gardner and a panel of specialists answer your medical questions. A new season of Ask the Doctor straight ahead here on NET. Well, for all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.